Hey people, welcome back. In this video I will show you how I made my dye build for the mobbing. Took me a while. One of the reasons I had to get a different skin because the default one actually flagged my stream on some platform. Thank you devs, I guess. As usual, before we start, about what's good in the build, what not so good. Good is a chill mobbing build, no pun intended. Cruise around and kill the mobs in a relaxed way. I also enjoy to use the fourth skill from time to time, though it's not really necessary, but it has really cool mechanics. Depends on how much you charge it, and I think we need more skills like that to have different mechanics with different skill outcomes. Not so good. Sensitivity on the first skill. As a player with low mouse sensitivity, it actually messes up with my muscle memory after playing Dia for a while. Also in the last patch, they seems to be changed some controller settings for the console players as well. I've seen some topics, people actually complaining about that change as well. Before we go, as usual, a little disclaimer. Focus on this build is actually a nice, relaxing drive. We will not go min-maxing fun out of the game for some theoretical DPS. The module. This is the core build. I will explain what we can do without ancestor module and which ancestor module you would need if you have one. So the cooldown corner. The cooldown is probably the most important stat to have like a good rotation with this build. Main damage increase comes from the focus on chill, it also gives the cooldown. Then as usual with the crit descendants, we are going with the skill concentration, emergency measures, frontlines. We are not using skill inside. The main reason because you're getting flat 45% crit rate chance just by having enough HP, and we have plenty of HP. I will explain later why as well. Speaking of which, we're using 2 HP modules. Yes, sometimes I also use HP modules because in this case it gives me lots of damage. Speaking of damage, dangerous ambush will be our last core module. The reason behind that, because the first skill of Dia is actually towing effect, plus she has third one as well, which we will not be using too much. However, with the first skill and dangerous ambush, when you pin down the elite, it most of the time one-shots them. I will explain in how to play section. And for the last one, you have a choice. If you don't have a good ancestor module, you can go with the focus on fusion to get your cooldown even less. The main reason behind that, we want to synchronize the first and second skill to have the same cooldown. I will show you how to use them at the same time later on. But if you do have an ancestor module, usually you go with the cooldown as a top priority, because as mentioned, synchronizing the first and second skill is really important. So the cooldown on the second skill is 3.5 seconds, and the charge of the first one is also 3.5 seconds. Default is 2.5, but if you activate the shield, you get additional 1 second, so have an uninterrupted rotation. For the other stats, you are looking for the crit hit damage and fusion skill power boost ratio, not the fusion modifier, because modifier will not give you much damage. Same reason why focus on fusion is actually almost useless. It only gives like 1-2% damage increase, so the cooldown matters more there. For the trigger module, the main one which we are using, the Steel Vanguard, it will be giving out the first skill, actually additional AoE. Main bread and butter for out damage, but since the elemental is actually matters from the reactor, focus on chill is also increasing its damage. For the stats on it, balance, damage and duration. Ideal damage and low duration is not ideal, and same with the max duration, low damage is also so-so. Try to balance it out. Weapons. Any melee weapon, you don't really need to build that, just hold it in your hands to get that crit chance increase. Here are my modules if you wish. I'm not using that sword for the die, but you can use it for something else. Let's say Blood and Iron Glaive if you don't like to use her rampage skill for the bossing. You can check her build in my latest video. Reactor. Fusion. We go with the cooldown and crit damage, as mentioned, to get that 3.5 second cooldown on the second skill. Components. Surprise. It's not a polar set. Why it's not a polar set? So this is where it gets tricky, right? With the polar set, you get 6% chill power and 60% crit damage. 6% chill skill power is like 1-2% damage realistically, because we already have lots of chill damage increase. 60% crit damage is around like 12-14% damage increase. However, we're going here with the max HP on all components set, and it will actually make a difference for the trigger module because it scales from your HP and shield combo. To get the max amount of damage possible from the Steel Vanguard, you need 40,000. And I'm trying to get as close as possible to that. Currently, instead of 600% damage increase, I'm getting around 564. So I'm pretty close to it. And as usual, I care more about quality of life in my builds, more than I care about min-maxing damage. Without the polar set, we are getting a little bit less crit damage for the first skill, but realistically we don't need that. Also, polar set has additional AoE, which is like 12% of activation, it's not worth it, as we already have multiple AoEs. That's for components mostly, doesn't matter for Dia. However, focus on max HP on first one, max shield on the last one, and the defense as a nice bonus on the third one. For component cores, as usual, max HP and defense. Arcade tuning. I'm going for the max DPS increase on first hit, because Dia already has huge damage multiplier. I could go with double minus resistance like I did with Freyna, but the thing is, when you fly like that, you will need to return in some cases because you would be dealing less damage on the first hit, and resistance reduction matters mostly after you apply all the debuffs. For the mutated cell, you go with the cohesion as the consistent damage increase. Inversion. Here we are going first node obviously is Dia node because it's her season. Second one, I'm going with the pain suppression. The reason behind that, we will get additional max HP occasionally, and in tough situations you will get capped on the damage for the Steel Vanguard. Third is kind of flex slot, depends if you have Ancestor module or not. You can go with the cooldown, but if you have a good Ancestor module, you can go for quality of life like movement speed. And last but not least, Fellow is the HP Fellow. Alternatives. This build has one alternative, and that's range. If you have to have more range, you can replace Dangerous Ambush with more range, then swap the reinforcements into additional range, and the arcade tuning just swap HP for the range. You will lose a little bit of Steel Vanguard damage, but unless you're in the latest dungeon, you should not feel it that much. Before how to play, let me show a couple tips and tricks which I'm using. First, you can bind actually the first and second skill on the same button. In my case, I'm using shift button, really useful. You activate the shield, you get additional bonus for the first skill, and you charge with the first skill like you sprint in the game. Second trick, if you charge against the wall, for example, you have multiple waves of enemies in the same spot, to not circle around, you can just chill like that. So how it plays, if you follow tips and tricks, you just press shift. It automatically activates your second skill, and you charge with the first skill on the same button. You could use the third skill if you wish for additional bonus damage from the Dangerous Ambush. For the usual mobs, it doesn't really matter. Keep in mind, if you don't have ideal duration of the trigger module, you will have to aim at the mobs while it actually cools down. In my case, it's like 4 seconds downtime. Where Dangerous Ambushes matters though, for the elites. You aim at the elites, you one-shot them because Dangerous Ambush works when you impale your enemies. However, keep in mind, to impale your enemies, you have to charge at least half a second because then skill switches into different mode and you can actually gather mobs with it. It might be placebo, but I noticed when you wiggle your mouse during the charge, it actually deals more DPS. But probably it matters from the terrain. Boss is probably the only place where you're using your ultimate. Don't forget to charge it because it will deal double damage and more range. Essentially, you can one-shot the boss if you're solo. But yeah, this is it. Pretty straightforward build. I'm enjoying it when I need to chill a bit from the ggDebon. Devs, please revert some nerfs of the ggDebon. If there will be minor updates, you will find them in the pinned comment. Have fun, and as always, thanks for watching. Peace.